Welcome to my show. It's a guest here. Her name is Katie Molumby. Mrs. Katie, how are you doing, ma?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be here.
Right, thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. Firstly, you are an author. You've written a book, and you are also a coach. Can you please, ma, Mrs. Katie, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Katie?
Of course. Yeah, I'm a certified health coach and author of the book Purposeful Health. My business and the book are both focused around bringing intentionality to our health and wellness and really personalizing the health and wellness practices that we use day to day. I think we live in a very fast-paced society. We also live in a world where we're seeing a lot of success online, and we think that we should just copy paste what someone who is successful does, and we expect the same results. And I want to bring everything back to the self and remind people that their own body, their history, their personal strengths and weaknesses all play a part in designing their best wellness routines. So, helping to personalize health, help getting really intentional, understanding the why behind their health goals, can really help for creating sustainable changes and having health feel like a celebration rather than something you're kind of fighting to complete or you're kind of bullying yourself through the process.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. And that's also you also remind me of a time when they said what work for one person might not work for the other person. Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. And also, I would like you to discuss more on your book, which is Purposeful Health, an international guide to passion and personalized wellness. And do you also have more books you're planning to write in the coming future, Mrs. Katie?
That's a wonderful question. Yes, I wrote Purposeful Health over the last year. It came out in February of 2024. It touches on, it splits up health into three main categories: um, mental, physical, and spiritual health, which I think is often overlooked. And I intend to write more books. I actually plan on expanding on those three areas and writing a three series book, just one on mental, one on physical, one on spiritual health. So that's the plan right now.
We're expecting that. Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. And I would like to dive to the point of context of mental health. We know mental health, but it is also connected to the ancient wisdom, Mrs. Katie. What do you think ancient wisdom means in context or in connection with modern health and wellness, Mrs. Katie?
That's a wonderful question. So I think in today's society, unfortunately, we've kind of disconnected a little bit from a lot of the ancient wisdom and practices that we used to feel very connected with, and a lot of that involves really feeling connected to a community in relation to our health and care practices, as well as feeling connected to the earth and using the healing practices and miracles that the earth provides us as far as bettering our health. And when that comes to mental health, I think a lot of that is, feeling connected to nature, feeling connected to that community, feeling in touch with ourselves, and really honoring kind of what's the dialogue going on with our within ourselves and speaking about that, getting that out in some way. That can be writing, but also it's a lot of times talking to others, speaking to a community of people about what we're going through can be one of the best ways to kind of work through, process, and heal through um, circumstances that are difficult for us. So, um, those are just three examples of how, ancient wisdom, I think, kind of supported mental health and something that we're seeing less of. Unfortunately, technology is great. It's brought us together today, but in many ways, it's also very isolating too, because we're not feeling the need to connect in real life with people as often as we did back in the day. So, remembering that we need that connection, we need human touch, we need, that to feel that love, and while it's great to be able to talk and connect with people all over the world, it's really important to have that like in-person interaction too.
Completely agree, Mrs. Katie. It's definitely not easy in this generation, but we just have to see what happens and what evolves in the coming future. Thank you so much, ma. I would like to go to the point of herbs and essential oil, and also what is also play in ancestral health, Mrs. Katie. During the ancestral time, there was nothing much like a medicine. It's more of herbs and herbs. So I would like to ask, what role do you think natural remedies like herbs or essential oil play in ancestral health, Mrs. Katie?
Yes, they were a pinnacle of ancestral health. You know, holistic health today uses a lot of ancient wisdom and knowledge using herbs, essential oils, and healing tools natural from the earth. And I think the focus was more on proactive health, doing the things like having herbal teas, using balms and tinctures. On a regular basis. So health was seen as like a proactive approach. We weren't waiting to get sick to take something to resolve our ailments. We were on a regular basis doing things to prevent illness and just increasing things that can improve our gut health, our autoimmune system, our calming our nervous system. All of these on a regular basis can impact the amount of times we get sick and impact our ability to fight illnesses. So while prescriptions are very necessary, they've contributed greatly to where we are today. I think we could improve a lot in utilizing and bridging the gap between those ancient wisdoms, using herbs and more holistic remedies to keep ourselves healthy rather than just reacting when we get sick.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. I remember once a time a person said something. He said, the ancient probably the ancient practices or the way they do their health stuff, probably most of the time does not have the measurements. The modern health care today, when someone wants to use a meditation, there's measurements for every single one of it. So I would like to ask if there is any risk in applying ancient practices to modern health. And if so, Mrs. Katie, how do you think we can avoid them, ma?
That's a great question, and it brings up a very good point. I think
Mm.
if you have any underlying health conditions, especially, or are taking any medications, it's important to consult with a doctor or someone that's, medically trained in understanding the use of herbs and seeing how they're going to react to those medications that you're already taking. While I encourage everyone to explore in that area, I think if you do have any especially serious health conditions, it's best to do everything with the help and supervision of a doctor. But if you overall are feeling pretty just normal in your health, you don't have any outlying conditions or severe circumstances, I would say try introducing some herbs into your day-to-day world. It could start with something as simple as a tea, or some essential oils like lavender or tea tree. Don't have a whole lot of adverse side effects. So just giving them a try, seeing how your body reacts, and if you're noticing anything off, then it's just not probably a good fit for you. But if you do have anything serious or underlying, you definitely want to use the work with a doctor on implementing those into your life.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. And I'd also like to dive to the point of personal success stories. As a person who have had a lot of experience, you have a lot of success stories when it comes to ancient wisdom and also the mental health care, Mrs. Katie. I would like to ask if you have any success story. Can you please share with us a success story where ancient wisdom profoundly improved the health, Mrs. Katie?
Yes. Well, personally, I've learned a lot about herbs and essential oils. I've done a lot of coursework. I'm becoming certified in those areas. So, implementing those into my own health and helping my clients learn about those tools as options for them has been extremely helpful. I see a lot of people that are on needing less medications because their diet and lifestyle and using a lot of those natural healing remedies have allowed them for their baseline health has improved enough where they no longer need a lot of those medications. I also think, the ancient wisdoms really they respected the cycles of our seasons as well as circadian rhythm. So respecting our natural lighting and honoring, kind of slowing ourselves down at night. And so by kind of slowing myself down closer to bedtime and removing a lot of that screen time, that's improved my sleep a lot. And I've helped clients supporting them and improving their sleep that way too. Um, Finding a community, health coaching in general is kind of an ancient practice too, because we don't have very much face-to-face time with our doctors. We go in an office, we tell them about our problems. We're there in and out in about 15 minutes, and we don't really get to share our big picture of what's going on in our life. And so health coaching is all about bringing it back to, like, let's look at everything in your life and see how every area is impacting how you're feeling, what symptoms you're experiencing, and what we can do to improve that. So, really, health coaching is kind of an ancient practice within itself by opening up a safe place for you to feel okay with just understanding what's going on with your body, processing what's going well and what's not, and then kind of planning some action steps going forward to improve your health. So, and it does so without, I never prescribe any prescription drugs. I work very closely with doctors, and I'm not trying to contradict anything they're doing, but I look at kind of outside of the doctor's office, what else can we do to improve your health? And a lot of that is very simple, actionable steps that can really impact your overall well-being over time.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. And we definitely know there are a lot of ancestral traditions, a lot of tradition during the ancestral time. It's a lot, even during my own time here in my country, there are also ancestral traditions. So I would like to ask how those ancestral tradition definitely approach the mind, the body, and the spirit connection today, Mrs. Katie.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. So I feel like, ancestral wisdom was a lot more respecting of all three of them. I think modern medicine has kind of put the focus on our physical symptoms and undermined a lot of the mental and spiritual aspects. And really being in touch with all three and seeing the value in all three, finding some kind of balance in all three areas is, in my opinion, essential in really being holistically healthy. While you might be not experiencing any negative symptoms physically, if mentally and spiritually you're feeling very depleted, your immune system's weaker, your cortisol levels are likely higher, and so you are also more susceptible to illnesses, even chronic diseases over time. So I think that they understood the importance of balance, and the importance of respecting all three of those areas a little bit more. While there was some taboo around talking about mental health within the last couple hundred years, I think before that, there were the elders that people would go to in their communities and discuss their issues, and be able to talk to someone who's likely been through similar experiences was very humanizing and healing. So, respecting our elders, understanding that we're not so alone in these experiences, even in the modern world. These themes and stages of life have been going on throughout human history. So being able to see that, talking to someone who has that wisdom of experience and time more than us can be one of the best ways to feel not alone again in what's going on. So understanding that they all have a place, and like, I love the idea of going to elders, talking to a grandma or someone who's just has uh, a few extra decades under their belt that can see my personal issues and kind of see it from a higher perspective, I think is extremely healing.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. I definitely agree with you. You know, majority of what we do now, even medically, is only the physical aspect, the spiritual aspect, every single thing. Even some, the person might be falling. I remember a time when I think last year I used to fall sick, but during that time I used to use a lot of medicine, and it wasn't helping at all. You know, it wasn't helping. But during the time, probably I started this podcast, I started seeing changes. I never remember the last time I fall sick. And I realized that it is not only the physical aspect, it's also the spiritual, even the mind. If the mind is down, that's, that downside, that depression, that drain is still going to be there. Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. And also, elderly people are also good to have around. It's it's like a blessing to someone today. And there will also be lessons we've learned. We have yoga, we have meditation, we have a lot of things that do exist during our ancestral time that really, really helps the health today, even physically, even spiritually, even it helps someone to even possibly live long in the life he or she comes for. What lessons do you think we can learn from ancestral movement practices like yoga, the martial art, for physical fitness, Mrs. Katie?
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad that you've had success just putting more emphasis on the mental and spiritual health. I agree. I think yoga is a phenomenal tool for getting connected with our bodies, really grounding ourselves. There's a lot of ancient practices like Tai Chi and even Feng Shui. Understanding where to properly place items in our home can be really powerful tools. It kind of puts us into a place where we're feeling connected as with something bigger than ourselves again. And I think a lot of times with our modern technology, we feel very isolated. And so those practices that ground us, I think also connecting back to the earth, even just walking around barefoot can be extremely powerful. Getting fresh air and sunshine, gardening or something where you're actually working with the earth and seeing, the miracle of things growing and flourishing from the earth is extremely healing and powerful within itself too. Um, and I don't think there's necessarily one tool that can work for everyone. I think, some people yoga just has never felt like they've connected with, and that's okay. But to continue to experiment, try new things, step outside of your comfort zone, and know that we are here today because of the wisdom from our ancestors. So really diving back into those ancient practices, those things that worked well in those societies hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, they're worth looking into, and they do carry weight in what they do for our bodies and our mental, spiritual, and physical health.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Katie. Lastly, Mrs. Katie, there's a question I normally ask Mrs. Katie. From the ancestors, from the forefathers, there are a lot of things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mrs. Katie, what do you think that thing would be, ma?
Oh goodness. I think we've touched on a lot of them. I
Yes.
really I wish I could say that I one really stands out. I would say honoring the earth as a healing tool. I think a lot of people today look at stuff like teas and essential oils as as not effective healing remedies, and in actuality, they can be some of the most impactful things without compromising our bodies. There are a lot of negative consequences with antibiotics. They do a lot of negative things for our gut health and our microbiome. So, really honoring the things that are less harsh on our body first. Not that we don't need antibiotics at a given point, but I would say first try something that's more natural, that comes from the earth before we go to something more extreme like prescription drugs. So, I think that also just knowing that there's power in you becoming the expert of your own health. We're always going to need the support of doctors, and I'm not saying get rid of your doctor by any means. I'm saying first get in touch with understanding your body, how it's feeling, what the signals are that it's telling you, and honoring those signals and those messages that it's sending. Because when we listen to what our body is telling us, it's really just speaking about what it needs. And when we honor that, we're gonna get sick and unhealthy a lot less often. So we would naturally just see less of a need for those prescriptions or more extreme interventions. So first trying to become the expert of your own body, and then realizing that we're surrounded by an earth that is full of miracles as far as healing tools, and really I would go there before going to a doctor in many cases.
Completely agree. There are a lot of natural things we could definitely try that could definitely help us in some certain situation. Everything is not just medicine, 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 as some people do. I want to sincerely thank you, Mrs. Katie, for this opportunity, for this time, for giving me the opportunity. It's a massive opportunity, and I want to also thank you, Mrs. Katie, for the time and the opportunity. Thank you so much, ma.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. You just have a brilliant spirit and soul, and I really appreciate this time to connect with you. I thank you very much.
All right, man. Have a wonderful day, Mrs. Katie. Bye bye.
Bye.